Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. We are starting in on a new historical project today, or at least semi-historical, because I'm going to be diving into the Italian Renaissance. And specifically, I'm kind of inspired by the dresses in the Borgias, which I know are not historically accurate. But as far as I can tell from the little bit of research that I have done, those dresses are kind of taken off of dresses that would have been worn in Venice and in Florence in about the early 1500s, kind of about 1500, maybe even as early as 1490, up through about 1530. So I am going to be doing this a little bit more of that fantastical Borgias bent as opposed to strictly historical, because we want to be fancy here, right? That's all it is. I want to feel like a princess, and I'm going to be making this dress for actually two upcoming occasions. For one, I'm going to be taking a bunch of you guys to Springfield Castle later this summer in Ireland, and one of the themes that we have picked out is kind of a fantasy renaissance. So I'm going to be wearing this dress for that. But before I even get there, I am also going to be wearing it to the Washington Midsummer Ren Faire, which is coming up this summer. I have basically mostly been wearing the exact same outfit to that Ren Fair for so many years with two exceptions, and I want something new. So just because I already have it in my stash and it's kind of the closest to what I can find for these Borgias type dresses, I am going to be using McCall's 7763. That is the Angela Clayton pattern that you see here. And I think I'm going to be doing the puffed sleeves with it, but I keep going back and forth on whether I want puffed sleeves for this or whether I want the sort of fitted pieces of sleeves, if that makes sense. There's a piece here and there's a piece here and it's all worn over the, I believe it's called a camicia. The chemise, basically. The really, really light, airy, semi-sheer chemise that's being worn underneath these gowns. And so part of me is kind of thinking maybe we should make the sleeves detachable. That was actually super, super common in this era. We see it even in portraiture, like this one right here, where this sleeve is not attached. This is an example of one of the puffed sleeves being not attached. The fitted sleeves, you see them all over the place being not attached. Though it does seem like the majority of the portraits from Florence and from Venice tend to have the puffed sleeves in this era, and the fitted sleeves maybe were earlier. The Borgias seems to use them kind of interchangeably. That said, I haven't actually watched the Borgias because I'm not sure what paid network they are on. So I've only been going off of pictures, but the pictures are really, really pretty and I like them. So basically the overall gist is that we are going with a slightly higher than natural waistline gown with a really, really low scooped neck, which will be at least partially filled in with that camicia or chemise, and either or both puffed sleeves and fitted sleeves. And part of the other reason why I want the sleeves to be detachable is that the Washington Midsummer Ren Faire tends to get really, really hot. And so I kind of want the ability, if I need to just remove the sleeves entirely and just have the chemise sleeves underneath, because that sounds like it would be more comfortable. The other thing that I've been going back and forth on with this is whether I want the gown to fully close, the skirts of the gown to fully close in the front or not. Now, it seems like technically the more common, historically accurate thing here was to have lacing up the side backs and the gown to be fully closed in the front. The Borgias doesn't really do that. The Borgias tends to have a front closing gown that is sometimes being laced over an undergown, and then the skirts are split in the front, and so we kind of have two gowns going on. Now, I'm going to be packing a lot of costumes for Ireland, so I want this to take up kind of as little space as possible, which to me means don't have two sets of skirts. Have it closed all the way. But at the same time, I want to be able to dress myself. And when you lace up the back here, that's really hard to do. A center front closure is much easier to do. So we're going to play around with this in mock-up form. This gown from the pattern is designed to be laced up the front, but it's also designed to be worn over an additional skirt. And what's weird too is that this is a skirt that's put on suspenders basically. Whereas I think that in the cases where they did actually have a split front and they had a different skirt underneath, it was more like a bodiced petticoat where we would have the supportive bodice underneath, and that would be really taking the strain of the bust and everything, and the skirt would be attached to that, and then you'd have the overgown situation. So I mostly just want to play around with mock-ups here to see what's going to best suit, whether I want to keep the lacing in the center front or change it to the side back, because I just feel like that's going to be a real pain to get on myself. But at the same time, I want to kind of alleviate the packing stress. And then that kind of brings us to the next question here, which is fabric. I am fairly certain I've decided on my fabric. I actually put a poll out on Instagram and some of my other platforms not too long ago about which fabric I should choose. And the options for that poll were this versus this. And actually kind of, you can see there's a pink in there, a separate fabric in there. This one right here is a silk taffeta. Both of these are from Memo Fabrics down in the LA Fabric District. And this one, I do have a lot of it because I had intended it actually for 2 other projects, both for a robe a la Francaise and also for a 1690s gown. So it's like, do I want to actually use this now? I don't know. Also, I'm still not convinced that this is the best with my skin tone, and both of those other projects doesn't have this quite as close to my face as this one would be. And a lot of you were really astute in your comments saying if it's silk, you run the risk of like it spotting if it's wet, or, you know, just maintenance on the silk. Whereas this one is poly. I love the color scheme. Pretty sure it's not remotely historically accurate in this sort of color scheme, but we're going for a little bit of a fantasy here. But polyester is not really great in the heat. And so I might die at the Ren Faire wearing polyester. Silk's not that much better, but it's maybe a little bit better. Especially because this is kind of a thicker polyester taffeta because it's got polyester satin on the backside, a gorgeous pink satin that a lot of you were like, oh, I should use this as the main fabric and this as like trimming. Or if I were to do the separate skirt underneath, I could have like the pink as the skirt and the shot as the outer. I'm pretty sure I have enough fabric to do a whole separate skirt, but I am not positive because I don't remember how many yards of this I have. I want to say I got 7. I could be wrong, but I tend to buy 7. But this doesn't look like 7, frankly, looking at it on the bolt here. So obviously I need to measure this and see what is even possible with this. The silk taffeta, I have a ton of that fabric because I've literally bought it multiple times. And so I'm not worried at all about like running out of it, but I would also like to have it for other projects in the future because I have other fabrics in my stash that coordinate with that fabric. So the first thing that we need to do before we can even decide which fabric we're using is we need to do mock-ups. And I'm probably going to kind of play with the drape of these 2 fabrics to see what skirts would look like. But we're going to mock up the bodice and see what closure I want for this project. And also, we need to fit the bodice. I mean, this is a commercial pattern. Commercial patterns can be a little bit iffy sometimes when we're fitting them. So I've already got my pattern pieces cut out. I'm going to go ahead, cut those out in mock-up form, and we're going to try it on and see if this pattern even works. So I just did the math on how much fabric I have here. I think I have 5.83 yards. Now, granted, commercial pattern layouts are notorious for being rather ridiculous, but this says that of the main gown fabric, I need 9 yards. Also, I'm tall, so I usually have to add length, and also that's a size 22, which is usually not my size. Size 22 is a 44-inch bust, so I am at least 2 sizes bigger than that. That also doesn't include the underskirt, like the contrast, which I believe is the one that's saying that it needs 2 3/4 yards. Now, I'm slightly confused as to why you need more of the contrast for 60-inch wide fabric than you would for 45-inch wide fabric, where you would only need 2.5. So yeah, make that make sense. But I was noticing that the skirt panels on this pattern are absolutely enormous. Like literally cut 2 of these and cut 2 of these and cut 2 of these. That's a lot of fabric, and that doesn't include the underskirt. So obviously, regardless of what we're doing, particularly if we are going to work with the blue pink shot fabric, we're gonna be modifying significantly, because I still personally feel like I have enough of this fabric to make a gown out of it. Maybe I'm crazy, but like, there is a lot of this fabric, and I am leaning towards this fabric as being the fabric for my gown because it's so pretty. And like, I bought this with no intentions of a particular project. I literally just saw it and it was a good price, and so I got it. And yeah, it's so pretty. I would love to make this. I feel like we've got plenty. I mean, God, look at that. It's giving total Aurora, but it's poly, whereas my Aurora costume I made a few years ago is silk. Same place that I got it from, though. I got both from Memo. But yeah, like, this is going to be so pretty, and I think I can use this part for contrast. I'm almost feeling like, because I don't have enough of this fabric, I am feeling more determined to use it for this project. Why am I like this? But yeah, I think I've pretty much decided we're going to use this fabric and we're going to make this work. Oh, and to be more precise, I have 6 yards and 6 inches of this fabric, and it is about 59 inches wide. Also, just as a heads up, the pattern envelope says that the back length from the waist is 42 inches, but I just measured this and it's 56 inches. Now, this is not shown with a train. A lot of these did have trains, as far as I can tell, like historically accurately, and they also do in the Borgias. Because I'm wearing this to a Ren Faire, I don't want a train, and 56 inches is a little bit excessive. I'm not going to cut any of the skirt panels until I have mocked up the bodice, because I don't exactly know where this bodice waistline hits, and so I don't want to accidentally cut my skirt panels too short. But that said, I think that even for me, who is 5'10", this back length, even if it's like really high, I still don't think I'm 56 inches. That's a lot. So note to anyone else who might be attempting this pattern, you probably will need to shorten it, and don't go off the pattern envelope, since we have now already found 2 errors on one back of a pattern envelope. This might be a very interesting project. Okay, yeah, this pattern definitely has a train that you just cannot tell from the pattern diagram or anything like that, because while the back is ridiculously long, the front is too short for me. So I will have to lengthen the front. This whole thing is rather confusing. I mean, honestly, it kind of depends on where the waist hits. Holding this here at my natural waist, it is coming to the top of my foot, which is about how long I would want it, but I believe the waist for this pattern sits more like here, which then puts this a little bit short. So we'll get to the skirts. I just need to get these pattern pieces out of the way, but I was marking them up as if they're size 26 right now, because I am just going to start by sizing everything, including the bodice pieces, up to a size 26. If you are not sure how to do that, how to size up a commercial pattern, I do have an entire video all about that from, I think it was a Simplicity American Duchess pattern that I used. It's going to be really, really similar, and I will link that video down below in the description so you can check that out. But right now I'm just drawing in new lines. I had left the paper there. In some instances, though, it's not going to be enough. Like, by the time it gets down here, I'm going to have to go off of the paper. But I left it where possible so that I could just draw in new lines. So trying to figure out the length on this is definitely going to be interesting when we get there. Well, I sized the pattern up to what would be a 26 and cut it out of this cotton canvas. And I was going to, like, you know, take my bra off and put on a chemise and all of those proper things. But I decided, let's just put it on and see if we're even anywhere close. We are not. We are not close. I don't know what's going on here. This is exceedingly ill-fitting. I'm honestly at a really big loss. Every time I look at something new, it gets worse. What is happening? What? So this needs work. I don't know what changes need to be made. It's so bad. It's so bad. I mean, the waistline looks like it's in the right place in the front. The back's too long, I think. But there we go. We got one item that's correct. The waistline. So I'm gonna figure out how to fix this. So I'm a little bit at a loss here, and I think that the answer is that I basically just have to manipulate this so badly, so much, in a way that I can get it to work for me. Because the problem is that I don't have resources for this period at all. Like, I've looked online for Italian Renaissance sewing patterns and come up empty for this specific type of era. Like, you get before with kind of the like high waist princess look, big flowing, like not this. And you get Tudor. That's what I have for like knowledge on this era is Tudor, but it's a very different shape. So I thought about like grabbing my Jane bodice, but it's just not made in a way that I can manipulate it into this. So I think I need to start from scratch, because kind of the elements that I'm looking at here is a bodice that like is self-supportive. It's not worn over a corset. So this pattern is meant to have boning in it. I don't know if that's accurate, but I know they didn't wear them over corsets. I'm pretty sure that was later / English and French. And from what I can tell from portraiture, there's no seaming going on in the front. There's no darts, there's no princess seams, there's nothing like that. So it's a flat panel that at the very least goes to the side seam, if not a side back situation. I honestly don't know which is more correct, but it does seem that the lacing tends to be in this general area, not here, not in the back. And I think that that is what I want to do, because just fabric quantity wise and packing ability wise, I want this to be a closed front skirt that is worn over a petticoat that I can wear with every costume I'm bringing to Ireland. I want things to be versatile. And so I don't want to waste packing space on a whole separate petticoat, not to mention the fact that I don't have fabric. If I'm going with the poly, I don't have enough of that fabric to make 2 layers of skirts. And I was looking through a lot more portraiture last night, and almost all of it closes in the front. What doesn't close in the front is like this kind of look, which I feel like doesn't look very high class. I don't know. Again, I'm going off of very little research for this, and I'm trying to like borrow elements from history, but also knowing the fact that this is kind of a fantasy outfit. And I could just like screw the whole thing and leave all of the historical part in the dust and just go with fantasy, because like I have patterns for fantasy. They all are covered in princess seams and darts and stuff like that. And I like the line of the historical accurate stuff that doesn't have those things. So I think what we're gonna try and do here is manipulate this into a shape that can then be like recut out as a flat pattern. So like pin this shut, pin out things like this where we need to clearly change this. Obviously right now I am wearing a bra and stuff, and so the boob shape is not going to be quite correct, so I need to figure that out. We obviously need significant issues in the shoulder and neckline. I mean, this is far too closed in particular. It should be like way out here. So we've got a lot of tweaking that needs to happen. It needs to get shortened in the back. It needs to get shrunk down in the back, because as far as I know, the necklines actually were quite a bit lower in the back. Like not, this is practically a collar in the back. So I'm gonna work with the mirror and try and figure out how to fix this. And I will let you know when I've got some updates. Okay, we're getting a lot closer. I am now wondering if actually it is too short after all, because I feel like at the max, this is where like the skirt should start, if not even like a ½ inch longer. So I do actually think this needs to be lengthened now. The back is actually maybe more accurate than I thought. I did not shorten the back. There's definitely still too much up here, and also it is too big because right now, although it fits, it's not giving any bust support, and it should be a little bit too small so that it gives bust support. I think the excess needs to be removed from the back, because if I take any more out of the front, it's going to move the side seam too far forward, and I don't think it needs to come out of the side seam, though it maybe could. So something needs to come out somewhere. I just have to figure out where it needs to come out of, and then also that extra length. I think that probably that should get dropped down a little bit more. And I mean, the seam allowance is on here right now, but frankly, this needs to get wider than just the seam allowance. So that needs to get dropped down. I'm just wearing this with like a chemise basically t-shirt that I made like 100 years ago and no bra. So this is right now, you know, attempting to serve as the support and failing. So yeah, we just need to make it a little bit smaller, but we will need to add more length in the final. Also, the way that I got rid of what needed to be like a dart was I literally pinched it out and sewed it. I probably could have done more because I feel like this is still existing, and so I feel like, unfortunately, that I probably need to make an additional dart or a bigger dart, but I basically just made a dart and then pressed it so the pattern piece was still completely flat, which is why the dart goes almost all the way to the other side of the fabric, because I basically just took a huge wedge out of it. So yeah, still some changes that need to be made, but at least now we have something that vaguely resembles what it's supposed to. Okay, I think we are there. I widened out the neckline even more. I didn't actually drop it down lower, I just widened it, and I took in another ½ inch here, a huge chunk. You can see how much seam allowance is back here all the way up, though I did taper it so that it was less coming out at the top than it was down at the bottom. And then I also tried at least to pin out a little bit more here, but it's really difficult to pin it when it's like fitted and is holding up the bust at the same time. So yeah, that was a challenge, but I do think that that's fitting. I do need to add seam allowance to the front, kind of tapering it out. So I'm going to add a ½ inch seam allowance here, tapering it out to about a ¼ inch here, and I don't need to add any by the time it gets to the center back. The skirt will just go up a little bit higher than what the center back is, so that I have a ½ inch seam allowance there. So yeah, I think that's right. My one worry is that this pattern is cut on the bias, and so what I'm worried about is that it's been like stretching every time I put it on, and what's to prevent it from stretching in the actual as well? I don't know. I mean, there's going to be boning channels sewn in here as well. Maybe that will help to prevent it from stretching. But yeah, the back in particular, the back is really what's cut on the bias. This at least started on the grain. I think at this point it may not be. And my idea with this is that this will be sewn shut. Well, it won't even be sewn shut. It will just be a fold. It will be cut on the fold where the center front is. And then I will have lacing here underneath. How will I put it on? I don't know yet, but we will cross that bridge later. I just feel like from everything that I've seen, again, there's very few that have lacing in the front. And when it does, it looks not as nice. So therefore we'll have to somehow work around that. And then the skirts will be attached, but they will have like a slit kind of right here so that there is room to get the bodice on and off. And presumably, if either my petticoat has pockets or if I am wearing like 18th century pockets around, then I would still be able to access those pockets, which will be especially nice for like the Ren Faire, for example. So yeah, I think we're in the right place. This mock-up started out wildly wrong, but actually we were able to get there pretty easily. So I'm going to copy this to paper patterns because these sure aren't it. And then I'm going to cut this out in the actual. I will probably use canvas, which is what I've been using for the mock-up here, for the actual lining as well, just to give a little bit more structure besides just the boning. And then the boning is going to be applied to the canvas lining before I add the outer. At least that's how it is on the pattern. And frankly, I mean, because we're having lacing here, this pattern is only connected to itself from front to back at the shoulder seams. So that shouldn't be difficult as far as lining goes and turning things right sides out, etc. I haven't yet decided on decoration for this, but I'm really glad that we figured at least this part out. The sleeves, obviously, if you have lacing here, the sleeves cannot be fully set into, but it does seem like in general in this era, sometimes sleeves were set in and sometimes they weren't. I would rather that they're not, so that I can have the changeability of sometimes maybe doing a fitted sleeve or no sleeve at all if it's too hot. So that's the plan. I'm gonna cut this out in real fabrics now, and we're gonna move forward with this project. So I'm noticing something a little bit alarming, which I think is barely showing up on camera, but I am pressing this poly on a wool setting, which is what I normally do for like a poly taffeta, and yet I'm seeing like scarring of the iron, and I don't know why it's only in some spots, but there's like, I don't know how well you can see this. There's kind of an outline here, and then there's like a secondary right here. And over here, there's like some lines that kind of look like they're resembling the iron. I don't think this one's really showing up. This part is on camera. Yeah, that's alarming because that is what I normally iron this type of fabric on, that setting. And I mean, my iron is normal. And so I'm not sure why that's happening, but like this fabric is now cool to the touch, which means that this has remained past that. And I don't know how to get it to go away. So because of the iron scarring, I decided to just do a little test, and I dripped some water onto here and then ironed it off. This is now dry. Look what's still there, water spot. And actually we can see it on both sides. The main reason that I was going with this fabric as opposed to the silk is because this sort of thing does not normally happen on polyester. So what's going on here? Because that's ugly, and it's making me potentially rethink the entire fabric choice. I'm really glad I tested this before I cut anything, but like, that's not good. Should I just wash this whole thing? And if so, will it get all ugly and gross? I mean, again, you can see that really clearly over here as well. So I'm not sure what to do now. So I posted a story poll over on Instagram to see if you guys think that I should either wash the entire yardage of fabric or if I should just switch to the silk fabric now that we know that the poly does spot anyway, and that was one of the main reasons for choosing it. So in the meantime, while waiting for results to come in from that, I have like a half hour of sewing that I am wasting, or a half hour of time to sew that I feel like I am wasting otherwise. I'm gonna get the cotton canvas portion of the bodice cut out. Technically, this is all supposed to be next week's video anyway, but I thought, oh, let's just quickly cut out all of this fabric to end this video off. Except now the fabric is thwarting my plans. So we're going to leave this next half hour in this video. I will let you know the results of the poll and which fabric I'm actually choosing, and then we will end off this video. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and cut this out. Though one other kind of fly in the ointment is that I was going to cut this on a fold, the back, but remember, the back is cut on a bias. So I don't know how much that's going to mess with things, but I'd really like it to be one piece cut on the fold. So we're going to try it, and we're going to see what it does if it is not cut on the bias. So that way both front and back are going to be one piece cut on the fold, and then they are just going to have the eyelets closures together in the side. So basically this is a two-piece bodice with like only shoulder seams, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I'm going to cut these out, and hopefully it won't do anything to change this to being cut on the fold. I guess that since I have the time, I should probably try it on again, like before I cut out either the poly or the silk. But actually it's the cotton canvas I think that I might be lowest on fabric-wise. So hopefully this will even fit on the cotton canvas that I have. Joke's on me. The piece of cotton canvas that I had that I cut the mock-ups out of, I don't have enough of it to cut out the lining for the bodice. Luckily, I do actually have a bunch more cotton canvas. I bought this last year when Joann's was going out of business, and it has been sitting in its fold in the IKEA bag where I keep all of last year's Joann's haul plus some thrifted fabrics, and I never washed it. So this half hour will be wasted because I'm gonna go wash this fabric. I think I'm gonna cut off a test swatch of the poly as well, throw that in the wash with it, and I guess I won't be sewing today. So I'll let you know the results of the poll in a sec and give you an outro, but I guess that's all the work that's getting done in this video. Oh well. So I washed my cotton canvas, and at the same time I also washed a swatch here. This started out 5x5 with the piece cut into it because that's the part that's on my swatch card. And then this is a 3-inch square. I have not yet pressed or measured this, but as you can see, it is extremely wrinkly. And I did not dry this. I just like left this out, pulling it out of the washing machine, left it out on my sewing table to dry. But I'm a little bit alarmed at how creased it is because we kind of got into this mess from pressing in the first place. So I'm curious to see how well this will press out and how easily. I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. I'm also going to measure it to see if any changes happen and compare it to like the unwashed and see what texture might be different, etc. With silk taffeta, you wind up losing like the texture and stuff when you wash it, which is why you're not supposed to wash silk taffeta. That should not be happening with the poly, but based on all of these wrinkles, I'm a little unsure. It also does feel softer. Again, this was not dried in the dryer or anything like that. It was just air dried, but I'm a little worried. So not only are these creases not fully coming out, it's a little bit more obvious, I feel like, on the pink side than it is, at least on camera, on this side, but it is obvious on both. But yeah, not only are they not coming out, but as I was pressing it, a drop of water from the iron got on it. I swear this is re-spotting. So I'm gonna put some water on this and see if it is in fact re-spotting, because obviously at that point, washing it will have been completely useless. So let's give a little test. Okay, so first off, this right here is the spot that I'm talking about. I'll try to get the shadow of the camera off, but that's the spot that came from the iron. I am going to put a little water there, shake off the excess, except it shook all over the place. Let's see if this goes away when I iron it. We are ironing this on a wool setting right now. And there's not much water left in my iron as far as like steam goes. Guys, this just re-spotted. I mean, granted, it's still warm, but it is dry. Okay, so I don't know what to do with this fabric anymore. I think this might be unusable. Well, crap. I had really fallen in love with the idea of using this fabric, but this is crazy. How does fabric re-spot after it's already been washed? And you can see as I move it, you can see the crinkles that never quite came out either, even with all of the pressing from the wash, because those were not in there before I washed it. Look at that. I'm going to press it one more time just in case. We're doing a little bit of steam. No. Wow. What's it look like on the other side? Okay, the pink actually... Oh, interesting. The camera is picking up that spot going all the way through. I cannot see that with my eyes. I am only seeing this through the camera. You can see it a little bit over there too, which are the corresponding spots. Well, crap. Okay, I guess we're using silk. So since I'm curious, I'm going to test the silk as well. This is some sort of a stain from tape, I believe. And then we also have like a label stamp on there. So this corner is useless anyway. Plus we've got this really creased in section. But let's just pour a drop of water on there and see if that water stain will press off. Silk usually spots. Sometimes it doesn't, but usually it will actually spot with water. You guys, there's no spot. How ironic is that? I think there might be the barest bit of discoloration right here. It's actually picking up on camera more than it is in person. But yeah, there is a tiny bit of discoloration. In person, that is not very obvious at all. How ironic is that the silk doesn't spot, but the poly does? Like, what? What? That's insane. Well, I guess I'm making this out of silk. Too bad, because I was really looking forward to using this fabric. It's so beautiful, and now I don't know what to do with it. Honestly, I'm disappointed. I really wanted to use the shot fabric, but now knowing that, like, if it rains on me, I would actually be better off in the silk than in the poly makes no sense. I'm really at a loss because I had now set it in my mind that I was using this fabric. I love the body of this fabric. I prefer it pre-washed than post-washed, but frankly, it really hasn't changed that much. It's just that we see a little bit of the crinkle. But yeah, I love this body. I feel like it is a much stiffer body than the silk taffeta. Whereas like the silk taffeta, normally when I make Victorians, like you can see my bustle skirt back there, that is lined with cotton organdy, and that is what gives it more of the body. I was not planning to line this with anything, and I'm a little bit worried that in just doing it in the silk, it's gonna be really thin. I mean, like, I wasn't planning on doing, you know, a matching silk petticoat or anything, so I'm just so torn, frankly, of like, do I make this in the poly but then risk it getting ruined at the Ren Fair, or do I make this in the silk but then risk it getting ruined in the Ren Fair, or in my suitcase for that matter? Because the other thing too is that most likely, though I'm a little bit torn now that it's been washed, but most likely as far as packing this up into a suitcase and keeping it in there for a week, because I'm going to England for 5 days before I go to Ireland, so all of my costumes are going to be shoved up in their suitcase for an extended period of time, and silk is usually a butt to press. Like, you just have to press it. There's no getting around it. Whereas poly, sometimes you can get away with not pressing poly. Like my Felicity gown, which is made out of poly taffeta, did not press that, which is really awesome. Obviously, I have to make a decision with this before I can move forward in this project. The only additional thing that I can do right now before making a decision on my fabrics is to cut out 2 pieces of cotton canvas. But since it's late at night, I think what's going to happen here is I'm going to post an update about the state of this poly taffeta on my Instagram, see what you guys think, make a decision, and let you know by the morning, and then we will go into next week's video. You can hear my iron spitting in the background, and that is something very pertinent because I thought that I had made my decision. I posted that poll. The majority of you, though it's honestly split 61 to 39% right now, but the majority of you are saying use the blue purple and never mind the spotting. I was still a little bit torn, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go press both my fabrics and put them on the dress form to see what they look like, to see if I can deal with the body of the peach versus like take the risk with the spotting of the purple. So I went to go press the purple fabric, and the iron decided to spit all over it. This has now been pressed dry, but you wouldn't know that because it looks like there's fresh water all over this fabric. I then kind of purposely made the iron spit on the test swatch that has been washed, and you can see that while the marks, this is the fresh mark, this is the mark from yesterday, while the marks are there, they are not as obvious as fresh marks. So in other words, maybe this does perform better after it's been washed as opposed to before when we get this right here, because the marks are less obvious here, but they're still pretty obvious. And also we had to deal with all the creasing. Now, I don't think that the actual texture of this fabric is any different. There's maybe the slightest bit more body in this, but I think it's just mostly that this has been crinkled and this has not been crinkled and pressed again. But you know what? I don't want to deal with this every time I go to reach for my iron. So I am going to press some of the peach out right now, look at it on the dress form, and just make sure that I can deal with it being a lighter weight. But I have a feeling that's what I'm going to have to do because this is certainly not going to work. And if I throw this all in the wash, it might still happen, and B, it's going to get that slightly more crinkly texture, which I'm not going for. This is not helping. My iron just spit on the silk too, and this time it's not pressing out all the way, so you can definitely see the splash here and here. These are maybe slightly less obvious, but it might just be the angle. Yeah, no, that's still pretty obvious. So apparently they both spot. I don't know why I didn't spot yesterday. You guys, this was supposed to be a simple project. Why is literally choosing the fabric the most difficult part of this project? Okay, wait a second, update time. So this fabric here, the splotches on this part of the fabric, this was that the iron spit all over it, and then I ironed it to dry it. And it kind of set in these marks, clearly. That is also what happened with the little test swatch. I ironed that to dry it. However, as I was ironing the silk just now, I noticed that some water dripped onto this fabric. I walked out of the other room and I came back, and those marks where the water splashed on, but I have not ironed it, are right here and right here. You can still see them, but they are significantly less. Also, this I think is still a little bit damp. So now I'm like, well, maybe the answer is that this can get wet, but then you can't apply heat to it. Now, I don't know what that means for ironing. If my iron is leaking, I can try using my new mini iron, but this one is leaking, at least on the wool setting, which is what I use generally to do synthetics because the synthetic setting doesn't give steam. And I need steam to iron this, clearly, because it's quite wrinkly, but maybe that's the answer. It's been a couple of hours since that last clip. You can still see this, so obviously it won't go away entirely, but these spots are significantly lighter than the ones where I tried to make them go away with the iron, which look really atrocious. So let's try pressing this for real with as few spots as possible and hang this on the dress form to really see what I think. So here's the two of them on the dress form. The gleam of the peach is really just stunning. Like, look at that gleam. But we also have the beautiful two-tone of the poly, which is also very, very pretty. I am much preferring the body to the poly. I pressed this all. I pressed that all. I feel like it doesn't look like I pressed that all, but it does look like I pressed this. Though it's doing that thing that I mentioned before where when you press it, you are seeing like striping, and in some places the actual iron marks themselves. I don't know where that one went, but I did notice it as I was pressing it, and this has cooled and the striping is still there. I feel like it's not maybe that evident on camera. You can see it a little bit in this area right in here as I shift it. I don't know what that is from, whether that's just like heat reacting or what again, but yeah, you can see it a little bit in here, but it's not very much, and I do feel like the body just looks nicer. I feel like if I went with the peach, I would have to line it with cotton organdy because it's just not giving me the body that I want, and this one is. Of course, I did also realize that this is going to be heavier in a suitcase than that is, even if that is lined with organdy, because silk is just a lighter weight fabric than the polyester. But if we're just doing this with one layer, I feel like when else would I use this besides something fantasy? And since I've already made an Aurora dress, this feels like the sort of historical fantasy thing that I should use it on. So you know what? I think after all of this waffling, we're going with the poly. I know that that was like the most hemming and hawing ever, but I feel like I've just been going crazy with this decision, and it's literally cost me like 2 days of sewing. Granted, those days of sewing are like an hour a piece, but still, here we are on Tuesday of next week's vlog, but still in this week's vlog because I wanted to make this decision first. And you know what? I'm just doing it. I'm going with the blue purple. Hopefully it doesn't rain. Hopefully it's not too hot at the Ren Fair. Hopefully by the time that I go to take pictures of this at a castle in Ireland, it's not gonna be ruined. I'm gonna take that chance. And I suppose We could also consider this kind of a working mock-up, because if it does get ruined, I will at least know how to make this and hopefully can make it again quite quickly. Because frankly, the sleeves on this are going to be the more complicated thing, but we've already figured out the bodice. Putting the bodice together should not be that bad. So we are going to do that next week. We are going to assemble this bodice. I'm going to get everything cut out in the meantime before next week's video starts for you guys. And we're going to make basically a Borgias Aurora. Wow, that's a mouthful. An Aurora Borgias. Aurora Borgialis? Maybe we'll call this the Aurora Borgialis dress. There we go. I've nicknamed it. And yeah, that's going to be it for this video. So hopefully you have enjoyed this video. At least we got the bodice mock-up in there for you. If you did like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, usually with sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays, and sometimes with additional costuming or sewing related content, especially shorts, out on Saturdays. But I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel memberships right here on YouTube below the video. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Jean and Kim. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!